At 87 years old, Pope Francis has stunned the world, not with a fiery sermon, not with a sweeping papal decree, but with one final, deeply personal request. A request so raw, so controversial, that the Vatican has reportedly done everything in its power to keep it hidden from the public eye. But what could be so shocking that the Church, the very institution built on confession and truth, would want it buried forever? Today, we're breaking the silence. This isn't just another news story. This is a historic moment. Unfiltered, emotionally charged, and shrouded in secrets that have shaken the most sacred halls of the Vatican. At nearly 90 years old, Pope Francis, one of the most revolutionary figures to ever wear the papal ring, is facing his mortality head-on. And what he's asking for in death may be even more groundbreaking than what he's done in life. But why the secrecy? Why the Vatican silence? Why is the Church, the very place built on faith and humility, so hesitant to honor the dying wish of its most humble leader? Let's rewind a few months. Quiet whispers began to echo from within the Vatican. Sources close to the Holy Father started hinting at something stirring behind the scenes. This wasn't gossip. This wasn't political infighting or ideological disagreements. No, this was something deeper. More personal. Something sacred. Those closest to Pope Francis, his longtime aides, priests who had walked beside him for years, noticed a shift in him. It wasn't physical. Despite a series of health scares, Francis remained mentally sharp and spiritually clear. No, this was something else. A burden. A quiet sorrow. A weight he carried in his heart. And then, everything changed. A private, off-the-record meeting took place inside Casa Santa Marta, the Pope's humble residence within the Vatican. There were no cameras. No press. Just a few of his most trusted confidants. What happened in that room, according to those who were there, was described as spiritually heavy, like witnessing something sacred and forbidden. Pope Francis made a personal, emotional, and spiritually profound request. But it wasn't about power. It wasn't about legacy. It wasn't even about the future of the Catholic Church. It was about his death. More specifically, it was about how, and where, he didn't want to be buried. "Do not lay me beneath the marble," he allegedly said. "Do not lock me inside the tradition that I have spent my life trying to renew. My rest must be with the people, not above them." This wasn't a request made out of rebellion. It wasn't ego. It was humility, raw and uncompromising. It was Pope Francis, a man who has challenged more traditions than any other modern pope, making one last radical statement. But what happened next is where things take a turn. Instead of honoring his final wish, the Vatican fell silent. Communications surrounding the Pope's request were reportedly shut down. Those who spoke about the meeting were allegedly warned. Journalists who asked about it received no comment. No confirmation. Nothing. So what is the Vatican afraid of? Why would they be so desperate to suppress the dying wish of the Holy Father? Because, according to leaks from inside the Apostolic Palace, this request is more than just about a burial. It's about everything the Catholic Church has tried to avoid confronting. You see, Pope Francis didn't just make a verbal request. He wrote it down. A handwritten letter. Signed. Dated. Sealed inside the Apostolic Palace. Not a formal decree. Not a public statement. Just a private plea. But inside this letter, according to those who've seen it, was far more than a burial wish. It was a confession. A warning. And a call to action. In the letter, Francis reportedly opens up about his growing discomfort with the excessive wealth and opulence that has come to define parts of the Catholic hierarchy. He writes about how the Church is drifting too far from the poor, the forgotten, the very people it was meant to serve. He speaks of golden tombs not just as symbolic excess, but as literal monuments that disconnect the papacy from the people. "If I must die a servant of Christ," he wrote, "then let me return to the dust as one. Not in a sarcophagus, but in the soil of the forgotten." That one sentence, sources say, shook the Vatican to its core. High-ranking officials within the Curia, many of whom cling tightly to centuries of tradition, allegedly began pushing back. Some even feared that honoring such a request would send the wrong message. That it would weaken the authority of the papacy. That it would open the door to radical change. One anonymous cardinal reportedly said, "If he is buried among the poor, the Church will lose its head." So instead of planning a funeral worthy of his humility, they locked the letter away, restricted access, and began drafting alternative narratives. But here's where it gets even more astonishing. Pope Francis doesn't want to be buried in Vatican City at all. According to a Jesuit priest close to the Pope, Francis wants to return to Argentina. Not to a national cathedral. Not to a grand mausoleum. But to a small, dusty cemetery near the slums where he once walked as a priest. Where the air smelled of earth, not incense. Where children called him Padre Jorge. Let that sink in. The leader of 1.3 billion Catholics wants no marble tomb. No televised funeral. No crypt lined with gold. He wants to lie in the same dirt as the poor he served. "I want to be buried among the people who taught me what God looks like," the alleged letter reads. And while the world hasn't seen this letter, multiple sources confirm it exists. One even claims that a simple grave has already been prepared in Argentina, no plaque, no monument. Just a patch of soil. Ready and waiting. But here's the disturbing truth: the Vatican doesn't just control doctrine, it controls the narrative. Every papal death, every ritual, every visual, is choreographed. It's not the man who chooses his final rites. It's the institution. And that's exactly what Francis is challenging. This isn't just a burial request. This is a revolution. One that strikes at the very core of Catholic tradition. And it has sent shockwaves through the Church. Conservative leaders fear that if Francis is buried as a man of the people, it will shatter the illusion of the divine papacy. Progressive theologians, meanwhile, see it as his final sermon, preached not with a Bible, but with a shovel. In recent weeks, speculation has only intensified. One bishop in Argentina, reportedly mentored by Francis decades ago, confirmed that a grave has been quietly prepared in Buenos Aires. No press. No announcement. Just a tribute to the man who changed the Church with nothing but a suitcase and a mission. And now the question is this: will the Vatican honor his wish, or erase it? Some insiders believe the Church may never allow the public to see the letter. Others fear it has already been destroyed, for the good of the faith. A chilling report even suggests that if Francis is buried outside of Rome, the Vatican fears the soul of the Church could leave with him. Because Francis didn't just lead the Church, he transformed it. From embracing immigrants to confronting sexual abuse, from washing the feet of prisoners to calling out capitalism, his papacy was defined by compassion and controversy. And now, in death, he may deliver his most powerful message yet. But will the Church listen? Or will the most humble request from its most humble pope be silenced forever?